Thank you so much, Solomon, for that warm welcome. And of course to you all. The Land Judge Victoria Katambankwanga, Judge of the High Court of Uganda, members of the judiciary present, the representative of the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, our dear honorable members of Parliament present, the representatives of the Uganda AIDS Commission in the room, the Equity Plan Steering Committee members present, the representative of the Uganda Law Reform Commission, the representative of the Uganda Human Rights Commission, our dear members of civil society, Inclusion Advocacy Fraternity present, members of the media fraternity, academia, our dear district partners all the way from Otuke and the other districts, dear friends of Uganet, ladies, gentlemen and others, our esteemed guests and distinguished participants, a good morning to you all. Thank you so much for honoring our invitation and for being here today. I stand before you this morning with a profound sense of honor and responsibility, and we would like in a special way to appreciate you, our partners, for working with us, for partnering with us, for supporting our work, and most importantly, for holding forth in the different spaces where you work and supporting vulnerable persons to access HIV, TB, malaria, and malaria services and justice. Your presence here at this national dialogue is a testament to our collective commitment to addressing the intersection of HIV, human rights, and legal frameworks in our society, and I want to thank you once again. Thank you so much. In this convening, we have our community, and I would like to appreciate you, our dear community, for trusting us, for enabling us as Uganet, and for allowing us to serve you. We extend sincere appreciations to you all, our funding partners, especially TASO Uganda and UN Women, for the pivotal support that you have given us to enable the continuation of our work on a day-to-day basis. I also extend appreciations in a special way to the Uganet board for their governance role in supporting us to deliver on our mandate as today is an important day for us as Uganet. It is the day when we commemorate International Dialogue on HIV, Human Rights and the Law. Of course, today is not International Human Rights Day. This time the day happened on a Sunday, and being a Sunday, we thought we would not be able to convene this meeting meaningfully, so we pushed it to this day today. This is the 5th annual National Dialogue on HIV, Human Rights and the Law, having started this journey in 2019, when Uganet, with the support of Uganda AIDS Commission, working together with the Ministry of Presidency, conducted the very first national dialogue, the groundbreaking national dialogue, where government launched the National Equity Plan. And today, we still celebrate the tremendous gains of the Equity Plan. We want to appreciate the Equity Steering past 4 years in ensuring continuity of this conversation. And here we are on our 5th national dialogue. This year, the theme for International Human Rights Day is empowering communities to lead in addressing human rights related barriers to access HIV, TB, and malaria services. And the international theme, of course, is consolidating and sustaining human rights culture into the future. And we are working with the themes. On this dialogue, as before, we do take stock of our gains. We give accountability for what we have done. We check ourselves on where we are and what we need to do now that the equity plan has 1 year to go. We are happy about the results that we received recently from the Breaking Down Barriers Initiative midterm assessment. Of course, UGANET, as one of the contributors, performed well, and we are hoping that we can continue to have good results by the time we conclude the 5th year of the equity plan, which is what we are working into. However, as we engage, we must recognize the progress we have made in the fight against HIV/AIDS, but also acknowledge the challenges that still persist amidst us. As UGANET saw 28 years ago, it is a social issue, it is a human rights issue. It thrives where members in the room. Most of us are aware of the HIV petition that UGANET, together with 2 others, filed before the Constitutional Court of Uganda, petition number 24 of 2016, in which the community challenged the provisions of the HIV Prevention and Control Act that fuel stigma and discrimination. We received a ruling from the Constitutional Court, and that ruling was not what we got, but we shall not tire as an organization. And very soon we shall be reaching out to you as a community, as our key actors, as we prepare to lodge our appeal to the Supreme Court of the land, the Supreme Court of Uganda. We must continue to explore other avenues. However, through dialogue with policymakers, I'm glad we have policymakers in the room, the government and all other avenues that can avail us with opportunities to create an enabling legal environment. Whereas we are seeking redress through courts of law, we also believe that the institutions, including those that are represented fully in this room, have the power to change the legal environment around us, and so we must continue to look at all possible approaches, not taking one per se. So I want to call upon each and every one of us in the different spaces that we occupy and the different capacities to play our role in bridging the gaps between policies, laws, and the lived experiences of those who are affected by HIV. In our pursuit to end AIDS, regardless of their HIV status, knowing that they deserve dignity, respect, and equal treatment, And knowing that discrimination has no place in our society and that the law must be a powerful tool in eradicating this. Our legal frameworks should protect the rights of those living with HIV and those affected by the other burden diseases like malaria and TB. Allow me to share with you this experience. A few days ago, I attended a forum that was speaking about inclusive education for children who live with disabilities. And one of the key speakers at the forum challenged us with a philosophical question. This is someone that uses, who is a member of the community of people with disabilities. He uses his 3 limbs to walk. So of course he's down. So he asked us a question, trying to point us to the big issue that we have as a society in addressing the human rights barriers for people that live different. And he asked us a question that if you were a parent and you have your beautiful daughter, and I walked into your compound and asked you for your daughter's hand in marriage, what would come to your mind? Of course, he flipped it the other way and asked us, if you were a lady and I walked to you and I asked you for a hand in marriage, or I asked to date you, what would come to your mind? That which we think about is what we struggle with. It is the attitudinal barriers that we struggle with that every day lead us into situations that we have. The current legal environment that we struggle with the different communities that see themselves being witch-hunted by the legal environment is because of the attitudes that we have. We choose to see people's social behavior before we see human beings, and that is contrary to the definition, the basic definition of human rights. So whatever it is that we are dealing with, the structural barriers, if we do not address the attitudinal barriers, we are not helping ourselves to deal with the challenges, and we must start there. Of course, I tried to flip that philosophical question, bringing it back to the communities we serve, and I asked myself, if someone that is known to do sex work walked into your room as a police officer and told you that they have been raped and they need services of the police, what would come to your mind first? If someone that is living positively, is suppressing their viral load, is adhering to treatment, walked into your compound and asked for your daughter's hand in marriage, what would come to your mind? Ladies and gentlemen, these are the questions that we need to reflect on. These are the big elephants in the room that we must deal with. As I conclude, I pray that this national dialogue will be a platform for robust and honest conversations. We pray that it will lead to concrete actions that will dismantle barriers, challenge stigma, and promote the well-being of all individuals affected by HIV, TB, and malaria. Together, we can build a society where human rights are meaningfully upheld. I thank you all once again for taking time off this busy season to make it here today. We do not take it for granted. We know there are very many meetings running even today, and we appreciate you for that. Later on in that day, we shall take a moment to commemorate Philly Lutaya Day, and we hope that we'll be that you will join us, and that we'll have a great time together to celebrate and reflect, and also share lighter moments of the evening together as one community. And this is to officially welcome you all to that event. May our deliberations today be fruitful and transformative for the communities that we serve. I thank you all for listening to me. So I now take the honor to invite our dear board chairperson, also the vice chairperson, Chambogo University Council, Land Senior Counsel, Babire Sarah Vega, to briefly address us and invite our keynote speaker today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, my ED, Grace Naiga, and thank you for inviting me here. The ED of Uganet has already observed the protocol, so I won't go through it again. On behalf of Uganet board and membership, I would like to appreciate you all for turning up for this great event today as we commemorate International Human Rights Day, formally celebrated on December 10th, last Sunday, under the theme Dignity, Freedom, and Justice for All. This year's theme resonates well with Uganet's core mandate on promoting social justice for HIV, health, and gender, and it speaks directly to the purpose for which Uganet was established 28 years ago. As we reflect on the enabling legal environment for communities today, Uganet calls upon all actors in the room to reflect on their role in creating an enabling legal environment for communities to lead in ending HIV, but also addressing human rights related barriers for the three burden diseases, HIV, TB, and malaria, for which we are convened here today. So on behalf of Uganet Board, I want all of us to extend our appreciation to Uganet's partners, especially TASO Uganda. TASO Uganda, I want you to stand up for recognition. Somebody representing TASO Uganda. Thank you so much. UN Women for making this day happen. UN Women, not yet. I think they'll be here later on. We thank you all for making this day happen. We also extend our gratitude to you all, our dear partners, communities, and friends of Uganet for honoring Uganet's invitation for this 5th high-level national dialogue. Let us clap for each other. We hope today's convening will reflect and commit to creating an enabling legal environment to enable communities to lead in the fight to end HIV by 2030, and in addressing the legal barriers around the burden diseases that continue to affect us as a country. It is therefore my honor and pleasure to invite not only my friend, but the Land Honorable Judge Victoria Katamba Nkwanga of the High Court of Uganda to give her keynote address. The Lady Judge Victoria is a distinguished member of the bench who for a long time has exhibited a passion for the marginalized members of society. She has diligently served on boards of like-minded civil society organizations and is a friend of Uganet and very passionate about HIV and human rights. My Lord, we are most obliged to have you here with us, and we welcome you to give us a keynote address.
Good morning. Praise God who has enabled us to be here today. Protocols have been observed, and like the foregoing speaker, I will not go through them again. Thank you very, very much, Sarah, for those kind words. Thank you, Grace, for always having me here. This is always a special day for me. I will tell you that I received Uganet's invitation to this 5th high-level national dialogue on HIV, TB, malaria, and the law after I had accepted to attend a board meeting today, which has started. But when I received this invitation, I said, I have developed a relationship with Uganet. This is not just an invitation. It is Uganet saying, we appreciate you, we see you. And I also appreciate Uganet. I thank you very much, Chairperson, my big sister. I thank you very, very much, members of the civil society and Uganet in particular. It gives me great honor and privilege to address you on this important day when and in this week when the world in general and Uganda in particular is commemorating International Human Rights Day. The board chairperson has already mentioned that this day was celebrated on the 10th day of December under the theme Dignity, Freedom, and Justice for All. As I make this keynote address, I'd want us to ponder on those words. What is dignity? What do you understand by dignity? What do you understand by freedom? And what do you understand by justice? I attended a school, a high school, where dignity was so important. But those times we thought about the external, appearance and not the intrinsic things, the value and worth of a person. We thought about dignity in Gayaza by the way you walked, the way you held yourself. And if you ran in the rain, we said that person is losing her dignity. Digilos. But today, dignity is so much deeper than that because it goes to the core of a human being. Uganda is a signatory to many international and human rights instruments, and I will not mention them. That means that we uphold the rights and dignity. We recognize, we uphold, we respect, or we should respect the rights of one another as human beings. I am aware that Uganda is one of the countries supported by the Global Fund under the Breaking Down Barriers initiative. And with this support, the country conducted a baseline assessment to establish barriers to access HIV services by key priority and vulnerable populations. The gaps that were revealed by this survey informed the development of a national framework for addressing these barriers. The equity plan, leaving no one behind, a national plan for removing and addressing these barriers and allowing for equity, human rights, and gender-related barriers to access to services was developed and launched on the International Human Rights Day, the 10th day of December 2019, at the very first national dialogue on HIV and the law. At that dialogue, I was not present. I attended the next dialogue, the second one, which was also in December in 2020, when the world had just reopened. And I am so glad that I attended it. That was the dialogue at which I started this relationship with Uganet, and I am sure that the work that you Uganet do and that the work we do in our respective spaces contributes to removing these barriers to equity, barriers to human rights, and barriers to gender equity. My partners in the civil society and in this fight against these barriers, I would like to inform you today that as a judiciary, our core role is to promote the rule of law and to contribute to maintenance of order in society. We administer justice every day. We administer justice in the courtrooms. We resolve disputes between individuals and between the state and individuals. mandate as the judiciary is found in the Article 126(1) of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Judicial power is derived from the people and shall be exercised by the courts established under the Constitution in the name of the people and in conformity with the law, with the values, norms, and aspirations of the people. The judiciary in its mandate is guided by a number of principles when adjudicating justice. Justice shall be done to all irrespective of their socio-economic status. It shall not be delayed. Adequate compensation shall be awarded to victims of wrongs. Reconciliation between parties shall be promoted. Substantive justice shall be administered without undue regard to technicalities. And the courts shall be independent and shall not be subject to the control or direction of any person or authority. Our core values as the judiciary are independence, impartiality, transparency, professionalism, integrity, accountability, equality, and respect. Our vision is an excellent judiciary that delivers justice for all. Our mission is to administer justice to all people in Uganda in an independent, impartial, accountable, effective, and efficient manner. In pursuit of this mission, the judiciary works closely with all stakeholders, particularly the people of Uganda, whose mandate we serve, to promote an organizational culture of innovation, learning, and continuous improvement, and lead the process of transformation among the justice, law, and order institutions. Our theme for this year's International Human Rights Day is dignity, freedom, and justice for all. This fits in very well with Chapter 4 of the Constitution, which calls for respect for human dignity and protection from inhuman treatment. I therefore call upon stakeholders gathered here and all Ugandans to uphold this very important constitutional provision. Uganda enacted the HIV AIDS Prevention and Control Act in 2014, which introduces serious challenges in litigating and adjudicating HIV AIDS related cases in the courtroom. The law introduced, among others, involuntary disclosure of one's HIV status, more especially for those with knowledge that they are HIV positive. This disclosure is wide as it relates to all persons in social contact with the person making the disclosure. This has created negative discriminatory approaches in handling cases of people living with HIV in the courtroom. This act has been in place for about 7 years now, but most of the cases prosecuted in our courts have not been commenced under this act, but instead under the Penal Code Act, specifically Section 171 of the Act. You saw some pictures being displayed on the screen, and I'll ask the technical person to put those pictures up again. Yesterday, I was in court litigating, adjudicating a case between the state and somebody called Chiyimba Tony, Uganda versus Chiyimba Tony. And Mr. Siranja, I am very interested in the Institute taking this up since you do investigative journalism. May I have the pictures, please? The gentleman you see in that video is a 23 plus 6 is about 31. 23 plus 6. Eh? 29, eh? Sorry, my math has eluded me, but because he said he was over 30 in court, so I'm having a problem. But he was arrested and charged with rape 6 years ago. He is a person who has HIV, is Chiyimba Tony. He was arrested and charged in Masaka. Yesterday, he was brought before the court for plea bargaining. He submitted to plea of guilty. When the plea was read to him, he pleaded guilty. Please put the other pictures as well. I shared many pictures with you. Not just the video. This Chiimba Tony, when he came in, and the case was called, I said, "Where's the accused person?" And I was told he can, like a baby in his arms. And I said, "What is wrong?" I asked him, "What is wrong?" And he said, "I was beaten at Chitalia Farm Prison." The people who are organizing, speaking to each other, I have a teaching background. I like attention when I'm teaching. And because they're at the front, I will not go on. I'm sorry I was raised like that. My children find me a little difficult, but that's who I am. So that gentleman you see in that picture, he was, he's a person who's HIV positive. And the story is that he went out drinking over 6 years ago to a bar. And when he went into that bar, there was an old woman. There was an old woman aged 65 years old. And after they had had their drinks and were both intoxicated, that is his story, she asked him to leave the bar with him. And they agreed to have a sexual encounter with one another. And they had their first sexual encounter under a jackfruit tree. And that was okay. And the lady told him, "Come with me to my house, and so that we can have another sexual encounter." And he went with her to the house. She did not switch on any lights because there were younger people in the house. After the second encounter, she said, "You must leave now. My husband will come back in the morning." Then he refused to leave, and he raped her. The third encounter was not consensual. So she then made noise and screamed, and he was arrested, and he was charged with rape. And he lived in Masaka, normally in Masaka men's main prison, until he was transferred to Chitalia a year ago, where, from what he has narrated, and that's why I'm saying investigative journalism should come in at this point, human rights activism should come in at this point, so that we fight the quietism and the laissez-faire approach that we have to some of these things. Then, in the year that he has spent at Chitalia, his health has deteriorated tremendously. He was beaten at Chitalia Farm despite pleas of, "I am not well, I cannot do the labor that you're giving me." He named the officers who beat him up, and I am not saying that they indeed beat him up, but he named somebody called Afande Jacob and Afande Kamunye. I speak these names here so that UGANET, the Institute for Investigative Journalism, that you do not keep quiet. Find this gentleman. Because when we said dignity for all, do we really mean it? Grace asked us a few questions, and I was pinching my big sister and saying, to some of the answers. Already, Grace said you have the answer in your head if you cannot answer straight away. So when we say we are promoting dignity, are we willing to go the extra mile? I am calling upon you. I discharged this man yesterday, and you've seen him walking to his home, and you can see what the house looks like. Even the environment in which some of these people live, it is already not dignified for anybody to live like that. So I call upon you. It's called the African Institute for Investigative Journalism. Please take up that the Uganda Police Force should investigate and bring to book, if they find that charges can be pressed, these people who have perpetrated that kind of inhuman treatment on another person. So these things are happening in the communities. People are discriminated against because they have HIV, because they have TB. I'm not so sure about malaria, but maybe. But people are discriminated against when they are not well. I remember one of my drivers called me during the COVID second wave pandemic in 2021 and said, Auntie Vicky, ngenda kufa at 3 a.m. in the morning. And I said, no, let me call an ambulance straight away. And they pick up. I said, don't call the ambulance. Don't. The whole village will know that I have COVID. Stigma. What are we doing about all of these things? How can we bring dignity back into the places in which we work? I was telling the chairperson, Uganet, that I'd struggle. What is my purpose in life? I think I also told Dr. Mugera. I don't see him in the room. Okay. What is my purpose? Don't wait to have huge platforms. It is in those very small places, spheres of influence, in which you live, that you can bring dignity and freedom and human rights to another person. I am aware that the sections in I think in the Penal Code Act were challenged in the Constitutional Court under Constitutional Petition number 24 of 2016. No, the provisions in the HIV and Prevention and Control Act of 2014, that those were challenged. And this challenge was not successful, as the ED has told us. However, there is still room for appeal, and we cannot give up. We keep going. Life is full of challenges, but we navigate those challenges by getting up and showing up and doing what we have to do. You may all appreciate that stigma, which I have spoken about, discrimination and punitive approaches against people living with or at risk of HIV remain highly prevalent. Sadly, this happens subtly, unseen, unknown, and unchallenged and unprioritized. These violations not only hurt those who suffer them, but they also threaten effective responses to the epidemic. So you can imagine a person who's 29 looking like that. You know, you hear these days people saying, HIV tebukyali bulwadde, AIDS takyali bulwadde. You know, tewali abulaga na bulaga. But look at this man. He was discriminated upon because he spoke up, he used his voice and said, I cannot do that hard labor. I'm living with AIDS. I am too weak to do what you're asking me to do. And that is how he was treated. Ending HIV requires enabling and social environments that guarantee the health, dignity, and security of all people living with or at risk of HIV. They are people. They are people just like you and me. This is the only way to ensure that all those in need of HIV prevention, treatment, care, and support have access to these services without fear of discrimination, exclusion, or bias. There are a number of policies and laws implementation which are still poor or lacking. These include, among others, the National Health Policy, the National Policy Guidelines on HIV Testing Services of 2020, and the Policy for Elimination of Mother-to-Child HIV Transmission. There are also gaps, issues, shortfalls in the national law and human rights frameworks as applicable to HIV. For example, criminalization of HIV transmission under the HIV Prevention and Control Act of 2014 and the Penal Code Act, particularly in Section 171. At the third high-level national dialogue held in 2021, Yuga Networking with the Judiciary launched the Judicial Handbook on HIV and the Law. I think that was the one at Protea, in a bid to facilitate administration of justice for the community. It is important that this handbook is further disseminated and conversations strengthened within the judiciary to increase its impact in safeguarding the rights of those that are vulnerable within the precincts of the law. And ED and Chairperson Uganet, regarding this handbook and its utilization, I ask that there be some sensitization of these judicial officers, some training. Sometimes books are given to people and they are kept on the shelf. They are not read. But when we have a practical approach to learning, experiential, then there is a difference. Then you make an impact. I also wish to call upon the Parliament, Uganda Law Reform Commission, and the stakeholders to address the challenges highlighted above to meaningfully contribute to ending HIV by 2030. As a judiciary, we commit to uphold human rights and protection of rule of law in the dispensation of justice. It is therefore my honor and pleasure to declare this dialogue on HIV, human rights, and the law officially open. I thank you very much for God and my country. God bless you all.
Can we love on her again? Lady Justice Victoria Nachintu Katamba. Thank you very much for that keynote and officially opening this convening. I think what you've just said is a story that needs to be told. I think it's our job as the media to go out and tell this story. I think that we have the members of the Fourth Estate here. I see Walter, I see my colleagues as well. We will go and look out for this person, and you can share please the contacts. I'm sure this can be a case study even for today's story. As the Institute, we will take it up and dig deeper and follow up and see if the people who did this can be, yes, can face the law. So Walter and the team, let's talk maybe after here, see how we can get this done. The thing about human rights violations is sometimes if we don't speak up and stand up to be counted, it will be us in that same space. I promise you. You may feel that it is so far away from you, but tomorrow it may be you in that state. And the most hurting thing is being in that state where you don't have a voice and no one is actually speaking up for you. When you expect the world to speak up for you, everyone is less concerned. You know, my family is okay, I'm well, it doesn't affect me, I can sleep and eat well, and you don't feel like it's very close. It's until when you get to that time when it's you in the thick of it all and you want the world to stand up for you. Trust me, I have been there. And because I used to speak up, the world stood up for me. I think that was back in 2019 when all of you started that whole campaign of, you know, release Serwanja and all that. Everyone spoke up and I felt loved, I felt appreciated. And I felt like you gave back to me for standing up. And so this for me is a call to everyone who is in the room to really stand up against such human rights violations, because if we don't, no one will stand up for you when you most need them. So I really want to thank you, Lady Justice, for standing up to be counted. Yeah. Us to actually stand up to be counted as well. Again, thank you very much. If you've just joined us, we're here for the high-level national dialogue on HIV, TB, and the law. Lady Justice mentioned that she has a board meeting. So I'd request that before we can leave her to go and attend that board meeting, that we have a photo session with her so that we can allow her to leave. Ma'am, thank you for creating time, because I know that it came in after you had made your confirmation for the board meeting. So we really appreciate it. First off, let's have a photo moment with you, ma'am. I think we'll be in front here. And I want to invite the board chair and the board members of Uganet, including the executive director, to come, and we have that photo as well with the Lady Justice. We'll make this